Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk with Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield. And today I have Laurel McHargue with me, also known as Leadville Laurel. Hi Laurel, how are you?
Hi, I am just dandy, and thank you so much for what you do for local authors. I really appreciate it.
You bet. I have so much fun with this job, and I have so much fun having local authors on. We have a wide array of things to talk about today with you, Laurel, and we really are here to talk about Water White, which is your science fiction fantasy type
Fantasy
novel.
adventure.
Fantasy adventure.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds marvelous. But first, I want to ask some introductory questions because you have some marvelous stories to tell.
Many.
We have a picture here of you in a military uniform, and it looks so sharp. Tell me about this picture.
Well, I graduated from West Point in 1983 with the fourth class that had women in it. After spending 3 semesters at Smith College, a women's college in Massachusetts, decided I wanted an even greater challenge. So that was an amazing experience, and I did 9 years active duty after I graduated and 3 years in the reserves, and then resigned to raise our sons. And then I went from raising my sons to teaching in the public school system. And then one day I decided to become an author. But the West Point experience was amazing and really helped make me the person I am today, I believe. And I have not written those books yet.
Yes. Oh, yes.
About my time there.
A whole nother set of books for that time.
Yes.
I have to ask you one more question about West Point because it's such an iconic thing to have graduated from West Point and then also be a woman who's graduated from West Point. Do you feel like what got you to West Point was being special on the way getting to West Point? Or do you think you've made more changes to your life because of West Point?
Yes and yes.
Yes. Okay.
While I was at Smith, my mom, who worked in the main office of the high school, got a call from the director of admissions looking for some boys transcript, and my mom said that, well, the guidance counselor wasn't in, but she had a couple of girls still in school, and one was at Smith, and he said, oh, Smith's a good prep school for West Point. And my mother thought that was funny, and so did my father. And at the time, they didn't know that I was thinking about making a change, so that triggered my decision to go there. And I had done well in school, and yeah, was just looking for a challenge. So it challenged me across the board, academically, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Oh, that's
and
exciting.
yeah, when you're raised in a family where your parents tell you you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up, you just take that for granted that you can be. But I realized that I hadn't tested myself across the board, and I didn't really know. So
and
it tested me.
Yes, I was going to say, was that the test you thought it would be?
It was more than the test I thought it would be, yes. It was wonderful.
I've heard that people who graduate West Point often love to visit with each other and keep in touch.
It's a family.
A real family.
Yeah.
That's important.
When you're in the military, you have instant family everywhere you go. It's pretty amazing.
So after West Point, and after you did your military service, you decided to become a teacher.
Yes.
What made you decide on that? As you would think of that as maybe a less adventuresome job.
Well, I resigned from the military at West Point. I was supposed to teach English at the academy, and my oldest son, Nick, was only 1, and he was so cute. And I really decided that I needed to make a decision between a military career and raising my son, and I wanted another child too. So I had my master's degree in English, and then I volunteered in my kids' schools for several years and coached Odyssey of the Mind and Destination Imagination.
Yes.
And I loved working with the kids, and so I just decided it was a natural progression to teach.
And what inspired you to write this first book called Miss ? Which is about your teaching experiences?
Well, I threatened my 7th grade English students that someday I would write a story about my year with them. It was my first year teaching 7th grade English in a school that ultimately closed. And I was a little surprised by the classroom experience, and because I like to write, and I've often journaled to offload emotions and things. I journaled my whole first year there, and about a few years ago, a friend of mine suggested that I do National Novel Writing Month with her.
Oh,
Stephanie. Stephanie, thanks a lot, Stephanie. She walked into my writing group and she said, "Who's going to do NaNoWriMo with me?" And we all looked at her like she had 3 heads.
Yes.
We didn't know what it was. And when she explained that it was the month of November, a personal challenge to write 50,000 words in 30 days, we looked at her like she had 5 heads.
Yes.
And
sounds
and then
incredible.
It was. And then October 30th, my competitive spirit kicked in a little bit because I knew she was doing it. And I decided on October 31st that I would do it, but I wasn't sure what I would write because I didn't know I'd be writing a novel. And then I remembered my journals from that first year, and I thought, ooh, perfect. I could use those journals and fictionalize my account and make me young and single, and so I could throw a little romance in there. But for the most part, the classroom experience that's in Miss was right out of my experiences. And it's Miss because that's what the students typically call female teachers. Yes. Miss, and you hear Miss all the time, so it had to be the title.
Well, tell me about one of the stories. This book is, there's some things in there that people might think are fiction, but that are actually right from your journals. What are some of those stories?
Yes, well, there was one that makes me cry every time I read it still. I tried a disciplinary technique that was suggested to me from someone in a really, really successful school district, that if a child was disruptive in class, stop the class, have them call home right there on their phone right in class. And so I thought, well, if it works. And so I asked this girl to call home, and she looked horrified and started crying, actually. And I had her, I was going to stick to the technique, and I had her step out into the hallway. And so I had the class do something, and I walked out into the hallway just as I heard her say, "But Mom doesn't want me either." And I lost it that day. Oh, yes. I really did. It was a rough school to work in, and the kids needed so much more than learning where to put a period at the end of a sentence. But there are a lot of funny things too, ridiculous things. The day I decided to teach them that I wanted sentences more complex than the ones I read in my Dick and Jane books growing up.
Yes.
And so I had a copy of Fun with Dick and Jane. And oh my goodness, I hadn't previewed what I was reading. And I started with, you know, see Dick, see Jane, and the next chapter was Big and Small. Yes. Well, first of all, even just by saying Dick and Jane, the kids were laughing because, you know, and then I had to tell them that, you know, Richard was a common name. And so we started with that, and they were rolling on the floor, and I was laughing so hard I was crying. Oh, that's great. And the class was just, that was pretty much. And
were you trying to maintain the composure and pretend like nothing was wrong?
There was no way I could, because I was reading it thinking, what am I doing? Why didn't I read this chapter first?
Oh, that's great.
But I think I made my point of more complex sentences than
Is your book trying to help new teachers with what to do or what not to do in some instances?
I would say it's a validation of what they are probably experiencing, and they might be thinking that they're the only ones having a really tough time. I'm a resigned major from the Army, and I really thought teaching 7th grade English, how hard could that be? Oh, very hard.
Very hard.
Very hard. So in addition to maybe validating what a teacher's experiencing, I also updated, I re-released it in 2015 with an editorial essay in the back with some suggestions of what community members and teachers and administrators can do to help make things a little better.
What was the original release of the book?
In 2013.
Okay, so a re-release with the editorial.
Yes.
You've got another set of books here. And what are those books? They're short stories, is that correct?
Yes. These are the Not Your Mother's Book series, published by a company called Publishing Syndicate out of California. And once I decided, I guess I should back up, when I decided that I needed to stop teaching in order to write, my mom had handed me a shoebox full of letters that my dad had written back in World War II, and back when Dad was still alive. And she said, "Have I shown you these yet?" And I said, "What? New shoes? I mean, new shoes?" So I opened it up, and all these letters. And so I looked at Dad and I said, can I just pull one out and read it? And so I did. I pulled one out and I read it, and he lit up and remembered the experience and embellished, and it was amazing. So when I saw those, I knew I needed to do something with them. And that was my first goal, was to write Dad's book. And I did fits and starts. I transcribed all of his letters. It took me about 3 months, and then I wondered what I was going to do with them.
Right.
And decided I didn't want to do a World War II book or necessarily his memoir. And since I'm a communicator, I decided I'd look at the evolution of communication over the years since his time.
Wow.
And so the book title is V-Mail to Email. V stands for victory, The Evolution of Eloquence. And it's not finished yet, because it's been interrupted by different things. So a friend of mine had read some of my blog posts and knew that I took a humorous look at everyday things, and asked me if I had a story or could write a story on my experience with menopause. And I said, oh yes, I could write a story about menopause. So I wrote it and sent it to her, and she said, oh, it's exactly what we're looking for. And oh, by the way, would you be interested in editing one of the books in the series? Because it's going to be a big series with all different topics. And I said yes, not even knowing what that meant. And I contacted the publishing syndicate people, and they said, would you like to edit Not Your Mother's book on being a stupid kid? And I said yes, again, not knowing what that meant. And what it meant was about a year's worth of work, many, 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 many hours, choosing the stories that would go in the anthology. And so this first one, Not Your Mother's Book on Being a Stupid Kid, is the first one that I actually got my name on. Oh, wow. And that was very, very exciting.
Oh, yes.
And then I have short stories in some of the other series. Just fun. They're nonfiction short stories, anthologies from different people.
How fun.
Yeah.
What a great anthology. People are often looking for a quick read,
yes.
and those are perfect for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Not Your Mother's.
They're like Chicken Soup for the Soul for the 21st century.
What a great
a little edgy
tie-in. Yes, yes, a good read alike for that type of book. Being an editor, you mentioned, what do you do besides just choose the books that go in there?
The stories that go in there?
When you're editing.
So there were probably close to 200 stories that were submitted for this title. And I had to read through them all and first rate them. 0 meaning I don't want this at all. 4 meaning it's going in the book. And then 3, 2, maybe I could work with them. So I knew how many stories they wanted, and so I narrowed it down. And then once I selected the ones that I thought should go in, I worked with the authors of the stories and suggested edits. And you know, some people can take suggestions for edits and some people can't. So that was an interesting learning experience. And then just putting it together, formatting it, arranging the chapters, and then submitting the document to the publishing company and having them sign off on it.
And it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work, not just all fun of getting to choose which ones go
Oh,
in
right.
the book.
Lots and lots of work. And it's difficult editing someone else's work because as a writer also, you know, you don't want to step on toes. You don't want to make anyone feel bad.
Sure.
So it was a great experience, really great experience.
And rounding out your authorship.
Yes.
Rounding out writing and doing that part. It's really interesting. Let's talk about your latest book, because I know you're very excited about it.
I'm very excited about it.
And it's very different from what we've talked about.
It is.
A little fictionalized
Fictionalized real life.
Yeah, fictionalized real life.
Nonfiction, short stories.
Yeah. So tell me, what is Water White?
Oh my goodness. So a year ago January, on the morning of my mom's 86th birthday, I woke up from a dream. And I've always dreamt in Technicolor, and my husband and my parents have tolerated me over the years sharing my dreams. And this one particular dream was just crazy. I was running away from bad guys, and then I started flying, and I had to get over this water, and halfway across the water I started falling, and a flying frog came out of nowhere and said, grab hold. And I grabbed hold of his leg, and he got me to the other side, and then died in my arms.
Oh my.
And then the dream went on, but I shared this story, a week later, I shared the story with my friend Carol Bellhouse, who is one of my editors in the book, and she said, you've got to write a story about that. And I probably wouldn't have thought to do it had she not said that, and it was just that poke to make my head explode. And and I just thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be fun to see what I could do with something dreamy, something totally fiction, and totally creative out of my crazy brain. So I started writing it, not knowing if I could really. And every day I got more inspiration. I have my morning walking buddy, John. He and I would take a walk in Leadville, and gorgeous scenery in Leadville, by the way. And Mount Massive is right there. Every morning would walk down the hill, and there would be the mountain. And he pointed out this profile of an old man down from the peak of Mount Massive, and I thought, oh my gosh, there could be a mountain spirit in it. And so Old Man Massive came about from just him pointing that out. And I saw the profile of the mountains, and in my mind I could see just a sheer drop off on the other side. And so that became a scene. And then I would meet kids, young kids, and I'd ask what their name was, and I would ask them what their superpower would be if they would have one, and then that would inspire a scene. And so it literally evolved, and through a couple of my dreams, some of the characters have come out. There's an amazing multicolored jaguar in there that came from a dream. Thunder is his name. And then I just have to point this out, this creepy flying frog.
Yes, I was going to be asking about him.
So a friend of mine, Christy from Virginia, showed up and knew that I was writing a book with a flying frog in it. And she said that was the only frog with wings she could find. And I was looking at it thinking, oh. And there's a shapeshifter in the book, the bad guy, who is out to kill the Celeste, our protagonist. And let me just say that this creepy frog inspired probably the most exciting scene in the book. One of the most exciting scenes in the book. There are many.
I love the creepy frog.
Yes, yes. Oh, I know. So that was really fun. But just little things would inspire me. Walking under the bridge with icicles hanging down inspired a scene where there's a rescue that happens under a sheet of ice.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been fun.
Your descriptions are so vivid and exciting. I can't wait to finish the book.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it sounds marvelous.
And I've already started book 2.
Oh my gosh.
So
as a series?
Yes. This is when you put book 1 of the Water White series on your title page, you have to make a series. So that's book 1. Yes.
So at what point in the process do you know you're going to do a series?
Well, I first thought that this one book was going to be a trilogy. And by the time I finished what would have been book 2, it was too short for a standalone book. So at that point I decided, let's make it one book with 3 parts. So I took a risk, I know, with the way I laid it out. The first part is all told from the perspective of Celeste, our protagonist. But at the end of part 1, she ends up in a very different place from where she needs to be. And so book 2, part 2, alternates back and forth between her perspective and the bad guy's perspective. Until they get close at the end of part 2. And then part 3 is the finale as told from all the main characters' perspectives.
Wow.
So it's set up kind of like a puzzle. And there's puzzle symbolism in there too, which makes it kind of fun. And it doesn't answer all the questions. So when I got to the end, I knew that there was a whole new world that the characters were going to go into after this.
Wow.
Yeah.
The complexity is really intriguing.
It's kind of blowing me away. Because the ideas just keep coming, and I really never thought I'd write fantasy adventure.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
It seems so different because anything goes, right?
Anything goes.
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean there are some rules, but and I have some different languages in there. I have French. The frog is French. One of my friends, Carol told me I couldn't have a French frog, and I said, well, he has to be. So he's French. There's a Hispanic girl. There's a Japanese girl. So in the back of it, I actually beta tested book part 1 with a group of 5th and 6th graders in my school district, and had some great feedback from them. Some of them were excited that they were challenging words.
Yeah.
And my son Nick suggested maybe having a glossary in the back.
Oh.
So I put Jude Hill, who was at the time 11 years old, started me with a glossary with words that she found, and I took that and expanded it.
That's marvelous.
And then I've got
you know exactly what words.
Yeah, and I've got some discussion questions for classroom in there too. So this could be used right in the classroom today.
Right in the classroom today.
Yes, today. Yeah.
So our Celeste is our protagonist.
Yes.
And that's who we see on the cover.
Yes.
What the heck is water white?
Oh my goodness. So I was trying to come up with a title for it, and I knew that water had to be in the title. And my two editor friends, Stephanie Spong and Carol Bellhouse, and I treat ourselves about once every 6 weeks or so to Cottonwood Hot Springs. We would go and just soak and get inspired and bounce ideas off one another. And I didn't have the title quite yet, and Carol knew that I liked one-word titles, right, Miss? So she said, maybe just make up something with the word water in it. And so for the next hour and a half, we tossed around words that you could mix with water, and nothing stuck. So we went to dinner after our soak, and she was sitting across the table from me, and she looked at me and she said, I have to tell you this. I keep hearing this word, so I just have to say it. And I said, what? And she said, water white. And I looked at her like, okay. And it didn't really dawn on me. And our friend Stephanie said, well, how do you spell white?
Yes.
And Carol said, I don't know, I'm just hearing the word, water white. And Stephanie said, do you mean W-I-G-H-T, like a spirit or a creature? Or and I got goosebumps, and I said, oh my gosh, that's the title of my book. Because there's something in the water. So the basic storyline is 14-ish-year-old orphan. No one is talking about the event that left her and so many others homeless.
Okay.
And the world threatened by this expanding body of stinking, oozy, silvery pink water.
Oh my.
And she leaves the home and is told that she's the key to stopping it. But she has no idea why, and she develops powers along the way and meets some animal she can communicate with, and then the mountain spirit, and then finds out that she's being chased by the shapeshifter who wants her dead, doesn't want her accomplishing her mission.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
That's fun.
I am impressed with the story and also the title, and I'm really impressed by the artwork on the cover.
Ooh.
That cover is really beautiful and draws you in. Can you tell me about how you came up with such a beautiful cover?
Yes, and this is funny. When I worked with uploading to CreateSpace, where you can publish yourself. I have my own company called Alpha Peak as my publishing imprint, and when you upload your file, before you say yes, people can start buying it, they suggest that you purchase a proof copy.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the cover design yet, but I had sketched just a silly little kind of a crazy cover, just doodling, and I uploaded that just so that when I got my proof copy, since I didn't have the cover yet, I'd have something on the cover, right? So, and this goes to the idea that people do judge books by their covers. So a friend of mine, Tonya Hance, mentors a 12-year-old girl, Natalia, who she thought might be interested in the story. And so I said, well, give her this and see if she's interested in it. Yeah. And Tonya said, I handed her the book, and she looked at it. And she said, really? And she wasn't going to read it.
Yeah.
And until Tonya took her online and said, this is the cover. It was still in progress.
Okay, good.
This is the cover, the actual cover that's going to be on it. And so she said, okay. So she started reading it. She finished it in 2 days. And her praise for Water White is the first blurb that I have in there.
Oh, wow,
she
nice.
loved it.
Oh, that's
but the
great.
fact that she wouldn't even have picked it up with my beautiful sketch cover, I just can't believe that.
Sure.
So it really, So anyway, my friend Stephanie had used a service called 99designs.com, and you put up your brief on what your story is and some things that you might want to see in the book, and she ended up with this gorgeous cover for a book that she published for $299. And what happens is you put it up there and you pay, and then people from around the world compete to design your cover. And they do it in 2 4-day increments. So the first 4-day increment, people submit the covers online and you look at them, and then you narrow it down to a couple of finalists, and then the second 4-day period you work with the finalists, and you tell them, you know, tweak this, take this out. She needs to have a green scarf hanging down her back. The mountain needs to be reclining. And they work with you, and then you pick a winner, and they get paid, and you get all the files for your novel, and it's.
That's fast.
It's really fast.
Yes, I believe you mentioned that today on your way to the show, you were sort of doing some marketing.
Yes. All right.
Tell me about your marketing.
My tip. Here's my tip to new authors, because indie authors have to do all the work themselves. And especially now with some of the bigger publishing companies merging, it's making it even more difficult for us to get seen.
Right.
And anyone can get a book up there. And so it's a matter of you marketing your own thing. So I drove here from Leadville, and I stopped at Georgetown on the way. And there's a little rest area there, and there was a grandmother there with her 8-year-old granddaughter. And so I asked her if she liked fantasy stories, and she said yes, she liked the Harry Potter series. And I said, would you like a copy of my new book? She said yes. So I gave her a copy, and her grandmother was very pleased. And I stuck a bookmark in there. You have to have bookmarks.
Yes.
Right? Just
people love
because
bookmarks.
you have your contact information on there too. So I left her with one, and then I went to get my oil changed at Stevenson Toyota, and I handed a copy to Alex, who takes care of my car. And then I went into the waiting room, and I thought, I'm going to bring a stack of books and bookmarks. So I did, and I put them on the table in front of me. And I asked a couple of people if they were interested in it, and they said no right away. And I could tell that I didn't need to talk with them any further. But another woman looked interested, and so I asked her. She said, come here, and I brought a book over, and she was very happy to take one and to share it with her family and her group. And then while we were chatting, another gal came over and just took one of my books and started walking away with it. And I asked her if she was interested, and she said, are you the author? And I said, yes. And she insisted on paying me for it, which I was just going to give it to her, but she insisted. So she was very excited.
Yes.
Yeah, and then wherever you go, if you have the materials, and I'm a believer in getting your work out there.
Yeah.
And you know, indie authors.
Yes.
We don't do this to get rich. I'm not doing it to get rich. Although if someone wants to make a movie of Water White, I'd help.
That would help. That would help. Yeah. Sure.
But to get the response from people is very, very rewarding.
I am just so happy to have you on the show. We could probably do another couple more shows about all the wonderful things that you brought with us, but I really can't wait to read Water White. That's very exciting to me.
Thank you. And my goal is to have book 2 done by the end of this year. Just tell me I can't.
You can't do it?
Don't tell me I can't. Don't tell me I can't.
Challenge accepted.
Yes, challenge accepted.
That is so exciting that there's another one coming, because so many people love when they get done with a great book to have another one waiting for them. So we'll be looking for that. Laurel, thank you so much. I'm sorry, Leadville Laurel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. This was fun.
It's been a pleasure. I'd like to thank Laurel McHargue for being on the show today and talking about all of her wonderful books, especially Water White. Check your local library for all of the books that we've talked about on today's show, and join us for more next time on Off the Page.